What is up guys, Nico here and welcome back to another video here on the channel. And for today, I'm going to review the Tamron 17-70 f2.8 lens. Alright, so first of all, before we start, I would like to thank Tamron Philippines for sending me this lens. Yes, Tamron sent me this lens, but this is in no way a sponsored video. This is not a sponsored review. This will be a purely honest review. Tamron has no say in what I am going to tell you here right now. With that out of the way, let's run down some of the specs of this lens. This is a zoom lens that ranges from 17mm to 70mm, and this is made for the APS-C line of Sony or crop sensor cameras. So this has a full frame equivalent of around 25.5 to 105mm on a full frame sensor. Now its aperture is constant at f2.8 along the full range of the zoom. Now its optical construction has 16 elements in 12 groups. It has 9 aperture blades. It weighs at 525 grams. Its filter size is 67mm, just like all new Tamron lenses in the Sony E mount, and its full name is 17-70 f2.8 III-A VC RXD. Can we make these lens models simpler? Anyway, the reason I mentioned that is because of the code VC, which means vibration compensation or image stabilization in the lens. Now, given all those specs, I will focus on 7 things in this video. Number 1 is the autofocus. Number 2 is bokeh, shallow depth of field, however you want to call that. Number 3 is its size and ergonomics. Number 4 is its price point, especially compared to its competitors or its alternatives. Number 5, minimum focusing distance. Number 6, the stabilization test. Is that VC worth it? And number 7, our favorite, vlogging. Alright, let's start with the autofocus. Now, during my tests, I experienced that this lens is at par with, the Sony native lenses or other lenses that, are proven to have fast autofocus and accurate autofocus, even if it's not native Sony lenses. As you can see, it has no problem shifting from one subject to another. It also had no problem tracking a moving subject. As you can see me here making a fool out of myself, testing, if it could keep up with where I'm going with, if I'm showing a product in front of the camera, if it can lock onto that product and go back to my face once I put that product down. One thing I see a lot in reviews of this lens is people complaining about the bokeh balls. That's when, light becomes blurred in the background and they form these like balls. They say that it's not that clean. Maybe I'm not just that technical enough to understand that because, for me, it's fine. Or maybe I haven't really experienced a lens that has, really smooth or nice bokeh balls. So for autofocus, it's a check for me. Now, for those of you who are wondering what does the bokeh look in this lens, I took 3 sample photos. One at 17mm at f2.8, one at 35mm at f2.8, and one at 70mm, all at f2.8. And you can see the shallow depth of field comparisons between those focal lengths. Now let's talk about its size and ergonomics. This lens is an APS-C lens. That's why I was surprised a bit when I saw that it was bigger. First, than my 17 to 28 f2.8 lens and my 28 to 200 f2.8 to 5.6 lens, both Tamron lenses, both full frame lenses. Now, I was thinking if you are on an APS-C system, you would want a light setup. That's why you're in that system instead of going full frame. So ergonomics wise, with this lens being bigger than even the 28 to 200, it's a pretty front heavy camera, and if you're going for a light setup, this lens negates that plan right away. As you can see, it's so much bigger than the camera. It makes, the camera look very small. By the way, a huge shout out and thank you to my friend LA Arquero for lending me my old A6400 so that I could test this lens on an APS-C body. So in terms of ergonomics, I'm kind of iffy with this lens just because of the ratio of the size of the lens to the APS-C body like the A6400. Now let's talk about price. This retails in the US for around $799. Its biggest competitor is the Sony 16 to 55 f2.8 lens, which when it was released retailed at $1,400, but now I think it's down to around $1,200 to $1,300 US dollars. Now people are saying in terms of image quality, they still prefer the 16 to 55. I could not make my own opinion about that because I haven't tried that lens. I haven't even seen that lens in person, so I could not confirm those claims. Now, if $799 is still a little bit too steep for you, Sony has an 18 to 105 lens, which I think sells nowadays for $650. But the trade-off there is that goes only up to f4. Again, this is an f2.8 lens. And of course, if you are in an APS-C system of Sony, you also have that kit lens, which is a 16 to 50 kit lens, but there is a variable aperture of f3.5 to f5.6. So for me, this is a good middle ground to all those Sony options, and I think for that price, getting this much range, 70 to 70 millimeters with a constant f2.8 is a very, very good deal at that price point. Now I tested the minimum focusing distance and check this out. The minimum focusing distance of this lens is no joke. Look at how close the camera is to the subject. It's that close, and I'll show you the image right now. And at 17 millimeters, this is how close it can go. This is the minimum focusing distance. So that is the minimum focusing distance of this lens at 17 and at 70, and I am impressed with the minimum focusing distance at 17 millimeters. You saw how close I was to Derek Rose, and this can actually be, a substitute macro lens if you just want to bring one lens on your trips. Now let's go to its stabilization. The Tamron lenses for the full frame E-mount line don't have lens stabilization. That is why I was surprised when they put stabilization in their APS-C cameras, which is very, very helpful because most of the APS-C cameras of Sony doesn't have in-body image stabilization. Only the A6500 and the A6600 has in-body image stabilization. Now for all the APS-C cameras of Sony like this A6400, they don't have in-body image stabilization, so I put this to the test. I took shots of my friends Derek Rose and Oswald Cobblepot, and I just, moved from side to side, moved back a bit, and I am impressed with the stabilization of this lens. When put side by side, I think you really notice the difference in the micro jitters of the two images. I also tested the stabilization while walking if you want to use stabilization for vlogging. And again, if you put it side by side, you can see that there is a difference. Actually, the difference of no stabilization and with stabilization with this setup is bigger than the difference of steady shot off and steady shot on. Not the active steady shot, just the normal steady shot in my A7S III. So that is pretty impressive for this lens, and for A6400 owners, A6300 owners, A6100 owners, you now have an option of a stabilized setup. And of course, last but not the least, vlogging. Now, for vlogging, a lot of people are saying that 17 millimeters is not enough. And I used to vlog on a 16 millimeter lens on an APS-C camera on the A6400, and I survived. And for me, it was okay until I experienced vlogging on a 10 millimeter lens on an APS-C camera. So I guess it's a personal preference. If you've experienced vlogging on an ultra wide, maybe you'll find this a little bit tight, but for me right now, I'm seeing that it's okay. The space between me and the background, I could still see the background. You could still showcase where you are on a 17 millimeter lens on a crop sensor camera. For reference, this is how it looks like on a 10 millimeter lens using the same tripod with the same arm's length in 3, 2, 1. All right, so this is 10 millimeters, same arm's length, so I could actually bring in my arm closer to me, and look, it's still wider than the 17 millimeter focal length here on an APS-C camera. I'm gonna show you, this is how I'm holding it right now. A while ago, my arm was all the way out. Right now, it's just like this on a 10 millimeter lens. So there you have it. The focal length for vlogging is a pretty much, subjective topic. For some, 16 millimeters, 17 millimeters is enough. That's around 24 to 26 millimeters on a full frame sensor. For some, they really need that ultra wide angle focal length, like a 16 millimeter on a full frame or a 10 millimeter on a crop sensor body. So, should you get this lens? If I was on an APS-C system still right now, my answer is yes. This is an amazing lens. Although I don't like the ergonomics, because with this, it's hard to hold for me. It's pretty front heavy. But what you get with that constant f2.8, that very, very versatile range of 17 millimeters to 70 millimeters on a crop sensor is just amazing. This is a perfect all-around, walk-around travel lens with a constant f2.8 aperture. And at its price point, you don't have to break the bank, unlike if you would want to opt for a 16 to 55 Sony G lens option. So that is it for today's review of the Tamron 17 to 17 millimeter f2.8. I hope this helped you in any way. If you are looking for your first upgrade, if you are on an APS-C Sony camera, or if you are already thinking about buying this lens, I hope this video helped make you that decision. And if you're still here watching, I'd highly appreciate if you'd hit that like button if you like this video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button and the bell notification icon so you'll get notified when I upload new videos. Also, like me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram, and I will see you in the next video. See ya!